So peanut allergy is an abnormal reaction by the body, specifically the immune system. And in people with peanut allergy, if they eat peanut or any food containing peanut, they get some very serious symptoms like breathing problems or a rash or vomiting, and it can be life-threatening. And the usual way we treat that is by avoiding peanut in the first place, but if they have a reaction, is by treating it with antihistamines or adrenaline. Peanut allergy has increased in prevalence over the last 10 years. It's probably trebled and now flattened out, but it now affects 1 in 50 kids. So it's a real problem. There are several school children in every school with this disease.
Well, Martha's now 12, nearly 13, and we discovered she had a peanut allergy when she was 18 months old. I had given her some peanut butter and she had a reaction. She had a kind of strange rash that developed very quickly all around her face and her body. And then we went to the hospital and she was diagnosed shortly after with a severe peanut allergy and was given an EpiPen.
Dylan was 18 months old and he was in the garden with my husband and our other son filling bird feeders with peanuts. And we had a big sack of peanuts and he put his arm right into it to fill the bird feeders, and they came in and he was a bit tired. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and he rubbed his eyes, having washed his hands but obviously not really vigorously, and his eyes just sort of puffed up. So we went straight to A&E where they gave him steroids, and actually we were really lucky because fundamentally he didn't ingest peanuts, so we had no risk of anaphylaxis through that exposure because he hadn't actually eaten peanuts. So I'm really grateful as to how we found out. We were really lucky.
So we first found out about Sandy's allergy when he was just a baby. He was about 13 months old, and we gave him peanut butter for the first time. So we gave him a tiny little bit of peanut butter as part of a Rice Krispie snack, and he immediately started to react. He started to cough initially, and then he started vomiting. He vomited a couple of times, and then it quite quickly progressed to all over body hives, at which point we were 100% certain that he was reacting to something that he'd eaten. We were just terrified because you're discharged from hospital after a few hours, and you're just given your prescription for the EpiPens and told that there's nothing else that they can do. So your entire world has just changed, and the doctors really can't give you much advice because there is no medical cure or anything to control it apart from strict avoidance, which is obviously up to the parent. And I think you go from a point of having a very natural relationship with food where you just, when you're hungry you eat. If you're out and about you just grab a bite. And suddenly you're in a situation where you have a fear of food. Food is a threat, and you're in this state of sort of hypervigilance for your child, constantly watching.
So initially we didn't know exactly what Dylan had reacted to when he had a reaction because he'd been exposed to different things during the day as well. And when we found out it was a peanut allergy, it was really emotional. We were really upset, and it took a while to get used to it. So we went through the emotional part and allowed ourselves to be upset. And then I went on to kind of full drive safety, cleared all the kitchens, sorted out the fridge, did all the cupboards, went shopping for things that were peanut free. And we went into overdrive in terms of protection and safety.
So you can't tell by looking at someone if they've got a peanut allergy. Where it really counts is in their daily lives. And if you talk to a family with peanut allergy, you'll find out that they've got lots of restrictions. There's lots of foods that they can't eat. Every time they buy food for their child, they've got to check the label. And that's not without risk. They can make a mistake and accidentally give their kid peanut. Or if they're eating outside the home, they have to check every single time that they're giving their child or themselves safe food. So it has a really big impact on all aspects of daily life. And that's not something that's obvious to people who don't have peanut allergy.
Since Martha was diagnosed at 18 months, her nut allergy has been a huge factor in our lives. It has kind of dictated and ruled almost everything that we do. Being able to eat out or go on holiday. The first time we went on holiday, I remember ordering our fish and potatoes, the simplest thing we could possibly think of, and just watching every mouthful because I wasn't sure if that was the mouthful that was going to do her harm or kill her in effect. So it was a very, very anxious time. Even going to the supermarket, I remember my first supermarket trip, it took me 4 hours to learn how to read all the labels, and you kind of felt that you were playing Russian roulette with her. But that basically meant that your life turned into constant risk assessment. So she couldn't do anything that any of the normal, ordinary kids were doing. For example, going to a friend's party. It was a nightmare. I had to contact the parent. Often I just couldn't leave her, so I would be the only mum that was still staying with her at the party.
As soon as he was diagnosed, our life completely changed and became more restrictive. So suddenly, all the fun things about life involve food. And you realise how out of control you are in terms of food manufacturers' supply chains or people preparing food in their own houses if you're visiting other people. And it makes you fear for, as a child who's a toddler, you can have complete control over what they eat. But as they get older, obviously, they are starting to make their own decisions, and you worry about how they're going to lead a normal life in those circumstances.
It was frustrating because all my friends were going out. I couldn't go out because they were going to like a bakery and they were going to buy this, but I didn't know if I had peanuts in it or not, so I had to not go. And it was just really annoying, and it's hard to explain to people because they kind of just think that you're just annoying them.
We started out with the idea that you can't have anything unless we know there are definitely no traces. And then I had to check every food product that he ate. And it was difficult to check for traces because although there are, I think, 14 now defined allergens in the legislation, which need to be named as ingredients for food, and peanuts are one of those 14 allergens, nuts, which are tree nuts, are also listed as one of those allergens. And often people confuse peanuts and nuts. So frequently I would phone manufacturers and get product specification forms to check whether or not something was safe from the traces perspective. But I think your world becomes a lot smaller with a peanut allergy and spontaneity goes out of the window. One example is, I guess, we'd be at the village recreation ground, the kids would play football and the ice cream van would come and all the kids would run off to the ice cream van and I would just dread it. But now we can run too.
So immunotherapy is a relatively old treatment that's been used for hay fever for about 100 years. But it's only recently we've started to apply it to food allergy. This came about because myself and my colleagues really wanted to find a treatment for peanut allergy, because for years and years we've been telling patients just to avoid peanuts in their diet. We realised that's no good because patients continue to have accidents and deaths occur every year because of peanut allergy. The immunotherapy treatment starts with a really tiny dose, which is about 1/100th of a peanut. But just to be safe, we get the patient to come and have it here in the clinic. And then they take that dose every day at home for 2 weeks, and then they come back for a dose increase. They have 6 dose increases then on the way up to the top dose, which is the equivalent of 2 peanuts a day. And the patient then takes that every day for a total of 2 years.
Dylan is now in the maintenance phase of his immunotherapy treatment. So he simply takes 1 capsule of peanut protein a week, and we just need to abstain from strenuous activity for 2 hours after the treatment.
When we first started the immunotherapy treatment, we were really worried that it was going to really disrupt her life. In actual fact, very, very quickly it just became part of her day, and we build it into the day really easily. All it means is that she has to sit quietly and be around an adult for a couple of hours after she's taken it. She does it herself. She mixes it with a bit of yogurt and eats it every day. So it's not been in any way as difficult as we thought it was going to be. In fact, it's been really easy.
We see improvement in many ways. So the first one is fairly obvious to us in that they can suddenly eat at least 2 peanuts a day, and that's great for everyone. It gives complete reassurance that if they accidentally eat some food that's contaminated, then they'll be fine. So how that's reflected and what patients say to us is that it changes their lives. Suddenly they can go out to restaurants that they couldn't go to before, they can travel on planes, and they can eat foods with trace labels on that they've been avoiding all their lives. So going back to all those quality of life issues, it makes a massive difference to them.
It has made it quite a lot easier because before I can go out on my own quite a lot of time because people would be anxious about what I'm eating, but now as long as I make sure there's no peanuts in my food, I'm fine.
It's completely changed her life entirely. It means that she can now eat things that may contain traces of nuts. We still obviously have to make sure people are aware that she has an allergy and what to do if something goes wrong, but everybody feels a lot more confident.
So oral immunotherapy for us has been absolutely life-changing. I would say because Sandy is so young, he's still only 6. In a wonderful way, he really doesn't know the difference about his life because he can't remember all the restrictions that he had. But for a child that's young, the person that it impacts the most is mum and dad. So for me, the stress that it has relieved has been absolutely unbelievable. The difference between our lives before and our lives now are just not even comparable. It just means that he leads a really normal life, and that for me is an amazing thing.
From a mum's perspective, the treatment has completely changed all of our lives. For Dylan, it means that he can eat more freely and he has more choice in terms of what he can choose to eat. And also it means that he's got this safety buffer, so if something goes wrong and he ends up being exposed to peanuts in some way, he can tolerate a certain amount or his reactions should be less severe. I think also looking to the future, Dylan's 9 now and he's in my direct care and I can keep him safe because he's in my charge. But when he's in his late teens or when he's moving on, when he's travelling or when he's at university or whatever he chooses to do, this treatment will provide him freedom and safety that I couldn't have given him.